Hello, this is Dr. Darnise, and I'm going to welcome you back into another session in our Plan and Prosper program as we move into this good new year. And I just want to say, this is meant to be something you can build on and something that you can revisit during the year, as long as you have access, right? Something that a series of teachings where you can review and remind yourself of why you signed up for the course. What is it that you had in mind when you decided to take an intentional position for your new year? I mean, we all know, like, January 1, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to start this new thing, but there's a reason that you said, yes, I'm going to take Plan and Prosper with you in this new year. And so I just want you to know that these are designed for you to be able to come back to and review and kind of, check your own progress, because most likely, as what happens with most people, you fall off. And, of course, I offer ongoing coaching because of that reason. People fall off. They need accountability, really. And, in any case, you can use this as your own accountability partner, because you know why you decided to do something in this new year. If it's something that there's been something on your heart and mind that needs to be addressed, and or that you're just looking forward to, you want to manifest in your life. I'm all about that. So let's just get into something that we can talk about this week, which is, I would like for you to consider, whatever it is that brought you, where you said, yes, I do want to sign up for this course with you, Dr. Darnise. What if it was one thing in particular? Understand that life has intersecting parts, right? So it doesn't even matter per se what brought you. Like when you go to the doctor, they'll say the presenting symptoms are, which means that you might start off because there is some symptom. There is this one thing, there is something that is acutely off or acutely calling you in your life, right? And so you show up into a space because you want to deal with that one thing, relationships, or, creativity, like you want to write a book, you want to do something, and you just need some help in getting yourself started and some accountability. It could be, why do I always have this particular recurring problem in my money or my life, whatever it is, right? We tend to give attention to the one thing that is causing a problem. Somehow it's getting our attention, right? This expression, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So in our lives as people, it tends to be that when we are struggling with something, it gets our attention. When we're in pain about something, right? Like physical pain, or even really emotional pain as well. If you look at what the letters are, PAIN, pay attention internally, right? Or pay attention inside, PAIN, pay attention inward. Because by the time you're having a manifestation or a symptom of something, it's probably been going on for a minute. Could be it's been going on for a lifetime. And because of that, it is affecting many areas of your life. So even though you may have one thing in particular that caused you to decide to focus on it, at least at the beginning of this year, maybe for the whole year, is because, well, there's the one thing, and it is painful enough that you need to give it some attention, or you've got enough hope attached to it that it will give you some relief from something else, that you're showing up because of it. But my point being that it affects other areas of your life. So if it's relationships, that's going to show up, over here in your money. If it's if it's what can I say? If it's a money problem, that's going to show up everywhere, right? And by money problem, it's not even so much as you might say, well, I don't have enough money, because whoever says they have enough money, right? It's not so much about I don't have enough money. It is a mindset about money, which is probably really a mindset that comes from fear, lack, and scarcity. So if you're thinking, oh, I have a money problem where I never seem to have enough, even when I get more, even if I got a raise, even if I got a bonus, even if I got this, somehow or another, it's gone and I'm back where I was before. I don't know how I'm ever going to get out of this. I don't know why I always seem to be living a life like this. And I will say to you, underneath it, there's a fear of lack, and it shows up as scarcity. And so it'll show up in your bank account, right, in your wallet, but it'll also show up in the way that you interact with people, because when you have a scarcity mindset, you tend to be a guarded person in general. So you hold something off to yourself because you feel like people or the world in general are not safe. They're not really abundant. So I want you to think about, what is the primary thing that caused you to sign up? The primary thing where you said, yeah, I want to focus on myself intentionally, because in the other first session, I said, we really have to be intentional. I'm always saying that. You can't really allow yourself to just live on the default plan. And because you're here, I'm going to assume you're not wanting to live on the default plan, because that will not get you anywhere you want to get. You know where the default plan will get you? Exactly where you are now. So if you want something different from where you are now, you got to be intentional in creating the next thing. So, so begin to think about, okay, what are the additional ways in which my thing is showing up in my life? Am I continuing to have what I call repeat performances in relationships, for example? So people will say, okay, well, I can't find a good person to date, right? I can't find a good man. I can't find a good woman. I can't find a good person, because there are none out there. There are no, yes, there are some out there. Some people end up in really good relationships, right? Some people end up very well partnered. How does that happen? Oh, they just got lucky, or there are no more like that. I mean, a scarcity mindset will tell you all of those things. Your ego mind will tell you all of those things, and you will continue to make that your reality. You will continue to manifest that reality, because there's a recording in your brain that's telling you that that's the truth. So a scarcity mindset left to run amok, right, on the default plan, will create circumstances in your life for you where you don't have enough of anything, right? Or you will have a severe imbalance. Like, there are people who, for example, do have a lot of money, but they can't seem to have a good relationship, right? So in some ways, they haven't mastered the balancing of it, right? So they're still out of balance. They don't have a scarcity mindset per se, because they've attracted money, but there's something else in their mindset and in the recording going on in their mind that says relationships are problematic for whatever reason, right? So then that becomes something that's very specific to them. People have abandonment issues. People, have all kind of fear-based belief systems around relationships, how trustworthy somebody else is. And people come from a place of being very jealous and possessive. If you are a type of person who says, oh, I got to check my significant other's phone, you already starting off wrong. And you may say, well, I'm not the one who's wrong. They're the one who's wrong. That's why I have to check up on them, because they lie and I'm not sure I can trust them. So just listen to that. You stay with someone when you say, I'm not sure I can trust them. Why are you saying? Because that's all that person is going to show up for you as. That'll become your life with that person. Or anybody else who you get with with the mindset that people are not trustworthy. So you will have what I call repeat performances. You will continue to attract the same type of person, essentially, different name, different face, but the same type of relationship, because you have a track in your mind that's telling you, it's giving you a very specific message about relationships. And so they're all going to kind of be the same. And then you'll say, okay, well, men can't be trusted, women can't be trusted. I have to always check. And everybody's living like this. No, everybody's not living like this. And if you meet someone and you are in that mode of not trusting what they're telling you, you have a gut feeling, right? Remember I said in the last session, and I always say, intuition is our superpower. Your intuition is telling you, but we then shut it down and we overthink it, right? And say, well, maybe this time it'll be different. Oh, maybe this hour, I'll just overlook this. I'll just overlook that. But if the person is really not trustworthy, the person is not trustworthy. Or is that relationship pointing back to you to say, why do I think people are untrustworthy? So when we do this work together on these sessions, and if you have been a coaching client of mine or want to be, we go deep, right? It's never going to be like, oh, let me just take a class with her on manifestations or how to, manifest my whatever, my house, my man, whatever it is. We're going to work on that. But really how we work on that is decluttering all the stuff that's been holding you back from achieving that already. Because if you were a vibrational match to it, you would have it already. But because you're not a vibrational match to it and you still want it, that means there's work to be done. And this is all of us. So it's not like, oh, I'm picking on certain people. No, it's all of us. It's part of the journey. It's part of it for me too. That's just the journey. That is the human journey, is in our evolution and our spiritual growth, is, are you consciously aware of the things that you're holding as true in your heart and mind? Because they're manifesting in your life. And if you don't want that, then it's a mirror for you to say, oh, let me go back inside and figure out why I'm having this experience over and over and over. It's not to keep us preoccupied with the external, where we think whatever we see in the external is how it has to be. It doesn't have to be that way, because there are people having a different experience than that. So then the universe, in all of its graciousness, which I always say is a double-edged sword to the universe's graciousness, it's gracious in the sense that we see, oh, you get to see what you're thinking about most of the time, right? You might not like it. And when you decide that you don't like it because of unwanted consequences, unwanted experiences, what are you going to do with that? What you're invited to do by God, the universe, is to take a look within and say, what belief systems am I holding where that would show up? What pain have I had where I've made up a reality, or I've made up a certain truth about what the world is? Because we've all done it. We've all had scenarios in our lives, childhood, usually it's family of origin. We've all had scenarios that have caused us that initial heartbreak. When you're a little kid, you have a heartbreak, you have disappointment because the grown-ups around you are doing the best they can usually, and they fail in some ways. Right? Somebody is not there, a parent is not there, even if they're physically there, they're not emotionally available, or they're physically gone. So it creates a feeling in you of abandonment or of a need for attention. There's a certain way that you have to have love come at you. Otherwise, you don't recognize it as love. But really, when you don't have something, it makes you chase after it. It makes you emotionally chase after it. But that can look like, I won't chase after anybody, but your heart yearns. Your heart yearns. So commonly you'll be attracted to unavailable people. Because if your parent, your family of origin was unavailable to you, what you learned early on was, I'm never getting my emotional needs met. When you're a little kid, you don't have sophisticated language. So all you're thinking is, ow, that hurts. I'm disappointed. You know, mommy or daddy said they weren't going to do that again. And then they didn't come and they didn't show up, or they didn't do this, or I don't know where my daddy is, or, you know, I don't, nobody comes to my school things. And that's a heartbreak. And on our little minds and our little hearts, we say, oh, that's the way the world is. But I still long to be loved and appreciated and seen and heard and valued. So as we get older and we start having relationships, even friendships as well, friendships, romantic relationships, we're really looking for that, somebody to heal that. Again, when you're unconscious, though, you don't know that's what you're doing. But if you look at other people's lives, because it's easier to tell with other people's lives, you can see other people doing the same thing over and over again. You can see that so-and-so keeps being attracted to the same type of person. And you're like, why are you doing that? Because the little kid in there is running the show and making all the romance decisions. The little kid is the one making those decisions. And if it's a friendship, the same thing. Like you'll end up in a friend group where you don't feel quite seen or heard, or they don't seem to take your feelings into consideration. You'll end up in a friend group where that same dynamic is happening. You'll end up in relationships where the same dynamic is happening. You'll end up in a workplace where the same dynamic is happening. Why? Because the universe is gracious and it's showing you, look, 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 look. Don't blame them, though. What they're doing is showing you, you have a pain in there. When you were a little kid, you believed that the world wasn't really here for you. But that ends up creating a longing. But I want to be loved. Of course you do. And so you'll chase after people, either directly chase or guardedly chase. And you'll want other people to prove that they really love you. So then you're the person who tests. I'm going to test them and see what they do. And the thing about testing is, I say this to people a lot. Well, what if they're testing you? Then you're failing. Anytime you're testing, your relationship is based upon, I have to test this person, you're off on the wrong foot. Just like I have to check their phone, I have to test them, I have to see what they're really up to, because I don't really think I don't vibe with them really, but let me see. You're off in the wrong energy already. Okay, so what where I started with this was to say, whatever you're presenting with, whatever thing led you to say, I want to work on this for this year, think about how else it's showing up in your life. Because we're organic and dynamic beings, right? So it can't be that something is only in one part of your life. It will show up in multiple parts of your life. So I had a minister friend of mine say, she would always say, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Now, some people find that hard to hear and receive. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And meaning, your worldview shows up in all aspects of your life. And therefore, the kind of things that you encounter, the kind of things that show up in your life are constantly being reflected back to you, no matter if it's in work relationships, romantic relationships, in your money, all the aspects of your life. Because again, the graciousness of the universe is showing you, pulling you, compelling you to heal. Right? The nature of this game, this human game, so to speak, is that we become aware and that we heal. But most people are on the default plan of living, and they are unaware, they're unconscious, and they resist doing things that make them uncomfortable, such as this kind of self-reflection. And I should have brought my tarot cards, because right now I'm thinking of certain cards. I might be able to. I'm thinking of certain cards even as I speak, because most people will spend an entire lifetime avoiding what they know to be the work that they have to do, because it's painful. because it means that they have to actually do something different than what they've been doing. They have to live in a way that is different, right? So people come to me as a coach and they say, well, I want these things to be different in my life. I want this to be different. I want this to be different. I really wish these things would change. And I say, okay, so you want some things in your life to change. Are you ready for your life to change? Are you ready to make changes? Because I can't really work with someone who doesn't want to make changes. So what I mean by that is, because you'll be like, isn't that the same thing? One would think that's the same thing, but it's not actually in the way humans are. It's because we want other people to change. We want other things to change. We're oftentimes not thinking, oh, it means I have to change. No, because I'm fine, or no, I'm right. I don't have to change. I just want everything else to change. And that's not how this thing works at all. So if you're saying, I want that other thing to change, I want to have better relationships, right? Yeah, I want to have better relationships. And then I will say to the person, well, you want your relationship life to change. Are you willing to make the changes necessary for your relationship life to change? Because that's what has to happen. I'm not a dating coach where I would say, well, let's just work on your profile online so that you can finally find the perfect person who's going to basically be perfect and allow you to just be how you are with no challenges. Relationships aren't even about that. Right. And I used to do relationship coaching. I was never the dating coach per se, but I used to do specifically relationship coaching. And I, did a match made, people got married and all of this because I match people on shared values, not on any of this like superficial stuff, right? That we can get caught up in because because of infatuation, because somebody is really good looking, somebody has money, somebody has something on the surface and it looks all good, and you get caught up in the romance, and you get caught up in, the high of planning a wedding or something. And then before you know it, you're married to somebody that you're like, I'm not sure I really, because there's a difference between a wedding and a marriage, right? There's a difference between a wedding and a marriage. And so people who say, I don't want to be alone, will end up in an unhappy marriage because they just wanted a wedding as a show to the world that I've been accepted, I'm loved, I'm chosen. And they'll end up in a scenario, maybe it's not even a marriage per se, but they'll end up in a relationship where it's not really a match. It's not really a good match. So anyway, I'm giving you some specific examples of what I mean by the intersecting parts of life. What is your so-called problem area or challenge? And if you're thinking, well, it's not really a problem, I just want to manifest something like, a new car, a new house or something like that, which I myself am working towards, in a whole other city. So it's a big move for me happening. But if it's like that, you're thinking, well, I'm not aware of a particular problem. I really would just like to magically manifest the new thing. And I would say, yes, I hear you. And so what's the problem? Manifest it. Sometimes the problem around it is not feeling worthy enough to have it, having a lot of fear around having it, because it means your life, once again, your life will have to change. If you are now a homeowner and you've been renting your whole life and now you're a homeowner, you're taking on some major responsibilities. Are you really ready? Because I could have bought a house in the last summer or last spring, and I got very cold feet at the last minute. I was like, oh no, I can't do it. And it really brought up a lot of stuff for me. And so I'm knowing that that's what happens a lot of times, like when that really good person shows up too, right? A person shows up and, you've been wanting this great person and they show up. Are you ready? Because it requires a certain amount of of willingness to be emotionally open and vulnerable to another person who, yes, can end up hurting you and breaking your heart, because we don't have control over other people. So anytime we get really truly invested and involved in a relationship, we are taking a chance. There is no such thing as, well, I'm waiting till I don't have to feel uncomfortable with. Relationships are spiritual work. Let me just say, relationships are spiritual work, and they are designed to make us uncomfortable so that we continue to grow. Hopefully you grow together. Hopefully you have a person who, it works, relationships are not 50-50. People are like, I want a relationship that's 50-50. Well, then you don't want a relationship. Relationships are 100-100. See, already for somebody that's not sitting right with them, or somebody else got free. Because if you're thinking you can show up with 50% of yourself and expect the whole relationship, no. Now, what happens though is, in all relationships, is both people bring their full selves, hopefully, but at no time in a relationship are people both doing the balanced thing where the relationship is equal on any given day. Why? You're like, well, why not? Because one person is always going to need more than the other person on any given day or any given time. That person could be sick. That person could have a job loss. That person could have had an accident that day. Could have been something fairly minor, like a tire blew out, and now they're calling you from the side of the road or whatever, which means you got to leave work or whatever you were planning to do, to drop that and go be with that person who needs help, right? This is your loved one, so you're going to do it. But that meant that whatever you were doing is out the door. And if that's going to take a chunk of your communal money, then that means you got to give to that person so they can get the car fixed and, whatever. So see, you're giving more than that other person right then. So, but over time, it should relatively balance out. It's probably never going to be this. I shouldn't say that it can't ever be, but if it is, it won't last for long, because again, relationships are spiritual work and they're helping us to grow. They're helping us to grow. So if it's all equal, it's all, Garden of Eden, nobody's leaving until something goes wrong, right? And by leaving, I mean growing. So that whole Garden of Eden story is a whole nother story. And if we were doing the religion class, I would be talking about that. Garden of Eden is God's way of saying to humanity, you got to get out and mature, but another story. So in our own lives, it's a matter of, okay, well, I got to be willing. If I want a good, healthy, whole relationship, I have to be willing to be a support to somebody. And hopefully I've chosen the right person and their support to me. But on any given day, it could mean anything, right? And if a person is ill and have a chronic illness, that means you're signing up to do maybe carry most of the load for, it could be months, could be years, depending on what it is and what's needed. So anyway, I think you get my point about that, is like, relationships are spiritual work. And they will require you to show up in your entirety. So again, are you ready for that? Are you a person who says, I want this aspect of my life to change, and you're willing to do the change that's necessary to create that change on the outside? You see, we shape our reality with our intention and also by the way we move our feet. Because you can't be thinking, I want, to make X amount of money, multi six figures, $1 million. And when an opportunity comes up for you to do something that might involve some risk, even, you shrink back. I mean, that's a tendency. Like I said, the house showed up for me and I was like, oh no, right? So even if you were thinking of manifesting something that is desirable, something you want, you're like, I don't have a problem, Dr. Darnise, I don't really have a problem. And I will say to you, okay, well, then let's just really focus on what's standing in the way between where you are now and you enjoying the thing that you want. Because something is standing in the way of it, or you would not be talking to me about it. You would not be taking the course for that reason. You would just kind of snap your fingers and, or feel very confident that you could have it. And that would be that. You'd have it and you'd move on to the next thing. So using myself as the example, when that house showed up and I had the realtor on the phone and the whole thing was, about to be in process. And I don't know what it was she said to me. And one more thing she threw in the mix or whatever. And I was like, right. And then I remember having not a nightmare, but I couldn't even sleep one night. I couldn't sleep. And this was a time when the market was crazy and it was a seller's market and houses were going like this. And so she was like, I'm gonna need an answer in the morning. I mean, at the latest. She's like, because this house is going to be gone. So, and I couldn't sleep that night. I could not sleep. I had so much anxiety. Like, am I making the right decision? Like, it was just a whole bunch of stuff, right? Because it wasn't just about the house, because I wanted the house. But remember how I said stuff gets triggered from, it's like the little kid. The little kid in me is like, oh, we can't do that. Right? The little kid is the one making the decisions a lot of times. So what we have to learn to do is check in with our little kid and figure out what does he or she need? Because he or she is running the show in a lot of ways in my life because things are intersecting, right? There is no, oh, it only affects the aspect of my life. No, it shows up. So I'm going to ask you this other question. What things need to come together? I have my notes over here. So I would not get so off track that I wouldn't keep up with what I'm trying to do here. What needs to come together for you to feel successful and happy? So this again gets to the visualization and the manifestation part here, how you create your world. Because if you're always thinking that you can't have it, you want, but you can't have. You want this loving, healthy, supportive relationship, but something inside of you says, I never saw that growing up, so I'm not sure that's possible. Then that's not a match and you're not going to manifest it, right? Or you're going to manifest relationships the way you saw them. So what things need to come together for you to feel successful and happy? How do you start purging that stuff? Right. And I've already told you, really, you've got to go in and attend to the hurts from the past. Now, I see I wrote this book over here, 40 something, right? If you're unfamiliar with me for somehow reason, I don't know how you're here, but I wrote this book, 40 something. Well, let me just say 10 radical lessons for women on how to live and love without losing themselves. But that's not the point I'm making. Because there's lots of way to lose oneself, and maybe I'll talk about that next time. But now that I'm 50 something and I go, what am I going to write 50 something about? Because I'm feeling inspired to write 50 something. But when I first turned 50, I was like, I don't know what I want to write. People kept saying, are you going to write? And I said, I guess so, but I don't really know. Well, over the last couple of years, it's been revealing itself to me. So I'll give you a little sneak peek on what the topic will be. I haven't started to write it. Okay, I have notes, but that doesn't really and it is that I think in our 50s in particular, so if you're younger than 50, you could start now and get a leg up. I think that because other things, by the time you get to be in the decade of the 50s, other things have kind of settled. You kind of have a better sense of yourself in your 50s. What starts to come up, bubble up to the surface, are the things that need healing. They come and revisit us. Meaning that child, the childhood wound that has been pressed down because we had other things to do. We were busy making a living. Most people are busy raising their children. You're busy. And it's easy to just like let all this other stuff go. I don't have to think about that. Oh, I'm not going to therapy. No, I don't have to do that, right? People are so busy that it gets in the background. But by the time you get to be in your 50s, for a lot of people, some things have really stabilized, right? Kids are older teens, or they're at college or gone out the house. You don't have to have the same pace of life anymore. And so we get revisited by this stuff. And like I said, the universe is gracious. So it's like waiting on us and says, well, now that you're 50, let's think about what happened when you were 5. I know you're 50, but let's say when you were 5, what happened? Let's revisit that episode. You're like, why? Why do we have to do that? Okay, so I say this from my own personal experience and from coaching people. As I said, I started this decade of 50. I didn't know what I was going to write. And then over the course of working with people, I'm like seeing this theme over and over and over. And then I'm starting to get this download spiritually that's confirming for me. Well, really, the download is coming first. And then in seeing my clients or whatever, it's being confirmed. People are struggling in their 50s with this childhood stuff that's still in their way. It's still in their way. And now they're revisiting it in acute ways. And often it's called a midlife crisis. A midlife crisis. What is that? That is when stuff that we have been holding together fails now. All of the tools and coping mechanisms that we had before for keeping the things together, and just so we could get through to the next day and raise the babies and do this and do that. And we had it all over here. We had it figured out, or at least on the back burner. Now, none of that works. It collapses. Stuff collapses. A tower card in the tarot deck. The tower comes and knocks it all out from under you. And so, at least emotionally, it doesn't even have to be all out in the world necessarily, but emotionally, psychologically, you begin to feel like, what is the meaning of all this? Why have I been doing this? I don't even understand what's going on. I don't even understand anything anymore. Why do I feel like this? And if you're a woman, you're going to add in menopause and just, right? Why? Because you're revisiting some things that need to be dealt with. And if you don't deal with them because you're unconscious still, your life is just going to feel crazy. You're going to see people like we see men, having midlife crises, and they leave their wives they've been married to for a long time and they go buy a sports car. I mean, just sort of the stereotypical. But it happens a lot, right? Where we see people doing something really erratic and their friends and family will be like, okay, this is not just about you making a change. This is irrational. Like you're blowing up your life because other things have to be addressed. And the universe being gracious is saying, now looks like a good time for you to revisit. Remember that abandonment wound? Remember how, when you were a kid, you learned not to trust people. Remember how you learned to be closed off and not trust people. And it was a very good coping mechanism when you were 5 years old, and when you were 10 years old or 12 years old, stuff was going on where you developed that as a coping mechanism, as a way to be in the world. But then you realized as an adult, especially in your 50s, somehow my life doesn't work the way that it used to. Some stuff, I've always done things like this. I don't understand what's happening. Mm-hmm. So 50 something will be about, and I don't even know exactly what, but that's the theme. Is like, wow, the 50s invite us, 50 something invites us into revisiting the things of the past. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Let's see if I can get to this. Okay, because I want to share here, I've given you all that as some things to think about in your own path. Let's see. Okay, in your own path for how you're shaping your year in this new year energy. So be thinking on those things and, write them out for yourself. What is the problem area? How is it showing up in my life in various ways? Like really become attentive as to how things are showing up in various ways. Because if you're like, I don't think it is, look more carefully because it is. And then what needs to come together for you to feel successful and happy? What are the different things that you can see in your life that need to come together? Right. Okay. Like if you're doing the external thing, you'll be talking about what other people need to do. if my so-and-so acted right, if my boss acted right, if I had more money, what, like, what are the things? I mean, you can kind of use those as a guide, because you could start there and say, okay, well, what do you mean by acting right? Okay, what needs to come together? I need a spouse who's more supportive. I need a boss who treats me with more respect, right? The fact that you're in a situation where you feel like you're not getting respect, you're not getting supported. Okay, then in terms of reshaping that and saying, well, what do I need in order to feel successful and happy? You need respect. You need support. So that's what I mean. Like, what needs to come together? What are the things you need to come together so that you can feel successful and happy, content? Really, when I say successful in this case, I mean contentment. What do you need to happen or be the case in your life for you to be content and happy? Start working on that, because it's going to point out where things have kind of fallen by the wayside. If you don't have it, when you know what you do, when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. I'll say that again. When you know what you don't want, you know what you do want. So you're like, oh, I don't want a relationship like that. I don't want a work situation like that. I don't want that. Then you know what you do want, which also points out the fact that you don't have it. Okay, so in reshaping your life, this becomes important. So as you move through this year and through your life, then you know that you need to be able to and willing to make decisions that line up with the things that you really need in order to be content and happy. So I'm saying a whole mouthful there. As you move through this year and through life, you want to make sure you're able to make decisions that align with what you most want. But you have to know what you most want. Most people are in the mindset of what they don't want. And so they keep sort of spinning in life around what they don't want, trying to get to what they do want, but they keep spinning around what they don't want. Okay, so I'm asking you here, get clear on what it is you need for your contentment and your happiness. And one way to do that is think about the things that are not functioning the way you would want them to, and say, well, how would I want it to function? If it's gone all to hell, gone left, what would it look like if it was good for me? All the decisions I'm going to make going forward must align with where I'm trying to be for my own contentment and happiness. That's what I'm trying to get us to. Okay, so what is this we're looking at? This is actually, this particular slide, this is a presentation of a larger program that I offer. And this particular slide is showing the different aspects of life that I talk about and help women with in the larger program. But I'm showing it because this is what I mean when I say that there are intersecting parts of life that need our attention. And this program is a longer program. It's 6 to 9 months, just depending on how I do it, how I set it up. It's 6 to 9 months, because what we end up realizing is, or what my clients end up realizing is, as we go, they begin to see the aspects of their life that are all connected and all affected by a particular problem, a problem that shows up, in relationships, as we've been talking about, is really also showing up in physical wellness. It's also showing up in spirituality or lack thereof. It's also showing up in all of these other kinds of ways. And so this longer program is that long, 6 to 9 months, because as clients go along, they begin to understand that more and to get more clear and clear that they need support to deal with all of it, because stuff starts coming up for real. And it's not always pleasant. As a matter of fact, it shouldn't be pleasant. It should not be pleasant, because some stuff has to be worked out. And, my clients feel like they get support from me as they do that. Now, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I've been coaching for a lot of years, and many, many, many women have gotten, help from me as they deal with the various things in their life, right? And so, again, I'm showing this slide to say, these are the kind of master classes I do on the topics that I address in that larger program, plus recorded teachings, like you're getting this recorded. And I also do them live and then record those and put them in the portal. And then also just do some other things and put those up recorded. So I think you get what I mean, because it's very much like this, with the addition of live master classes and some individual coaching if people want to add that on. So I'm going to be showing, bits of this as we go on. Again, these are just some additional things that we do in that larger program. Virtual co-working time. We do a creative exercise together, which is writing. We are writing our own next episode of our lives. We're using writing as a spiritual tool, and writing becomes a spiritual exercise so that we are writing our way forward. Like literally, what are you creating? What are you manifesting? We come together co-working time so that people can schedule it and not say, oh, I don't have time for this. I don't have time. I never can get to it. I never get to my writing. I never get to my creative work. No, we're going to schedule it so that we have this time together, and that you have this time for yourself, more importantly. So we gather for this co-working time. Anyway, this is what I'm showing you here. I just want to tell you what the larger thing that you're looking at. And so, I typically work with women who are, asking what now. They're in their 40s, 50s, and they're saying, okay, yes, it's my second half. Now what? Now what do I focus on? And as I said, because other stuff starts coming up. These midlife questions start coming up, midlife crises, or to avoid it being a crisis, can we get proactive? Can we get intentional? Can we lean into our intuition, which is really guiding us? The intuition is guiding us, right? And then get intentional, because that's your magic wand. Be intentional so that you manifest the kind of things that you want to. So these are just some of the questions we work with. If you're starting over in life, now what? Right? Stuff might happen. And now I got to start over. I didn't see this coming, but, for various reasons, like some people, their spouse dies, or, they lose their job in a cutback or whatever, mass layoff. And then they're like, oh my gosh, now what? If you're leveling up in your career, if now, you're like, I'm about to go into senior level management here, and wow, one, do I want that? Or two, I definitely want that. And how do I make that happen? How do I get myself together so that I can end up with that, top level vice presidency or whatever, or CFO kind of position? If you're leaving one career for creative entrepreneurship, now what? Meaning, if you're stepping away from what's been your career and now you want to be a creative entrepreneur, a writer, an artist of some kind, how do you do this? Especially when you're 40, 50, there's a lot of fear that happens. And I've recreated my own life a few times. So I feel like I'm pretty good at this, leaving one career and stepping into creative entrepreneurship as a writer, and as a coach, as you see here. But I've managed to do both for a long time. And as you'll see coming up here, I'm going to really step away from the college professor life and really jump at least 90% into more creative entrepreneurship. And so there are other people who want to do that. 40, 50 people retired early, and they're, in their early 60s, and they're like, I still have energy. I'm still trying to do something out here. So, if that's you too, you might want to consider this program with me. If you're transitioning into retirement, now what? My cousin, who's in her early 60s, says she failed at retirement. She's like, I'm failing retirement, which means she's bored because she retired from her corporate position. And she's like, oh, now what? Right? Like, now what? If you're 60 and you still have your health, you're still energetic, you still want to do some things, you still got a lot of life in you. So anyway, I just want to share that with you, let you know what else I'm offering. If you are interested, do reach out. And I'm gonna stop my share now and wrap up this session. And I'm going to say bye for now. Reach out as always. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram and all that. You can find me at my email, Dr. Darnise at drdarnisemartin.com. Other than that, I will see you next time.